don't know who I am. I don't remember where I started to pretend. I'm afraid of being vulnerable. People see the real me, the person I try not to.
We're here with Cheryl and Taka.
Yeah, Manataka.
Manataka.
Cherokee peaceful living. You see how peaceful it is,
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So today we're going to just hear a little bit about your journey on when you went on the reversal of the Trail of Tears and
Okay.
what that was all about and how you came to even be part of the whole mission with the Cherokees. And
Okay.
Cheryl was one of the only white people, non-Cherokee, right?
That's correct.
That was invited to go on this
There were
journey.
three of us.
There were three of you?
All together.
Okay. and
There
who-
were non-Cherokee.
Non-Cherokee.
Yeah, the rest were Cherokee.
How did you come to even be connected to the Cherokee in the beginning?
Wow. Well, that goes back to when I retired from TVA, and
Okay.
I was coming to look for houses in the mountains.
Okay.
And I had been involved with using horses for healing,
Oh.
and equine-assisted psychotherapy it was called.
Oh, wow.
And I had become aware of substance abuse and a lot of challenges that the youth in Cherokee were having.
Okay.
So I invited doctors and nurses from the hospital to come over to Horse Sense of the Carolinas
Okay.
to learn about using horses for therapy.
And dealing with addictions as
Yes,
well?
and dealing with addictions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the horses and therapy and?
Oh, it was a beautiful experience. You have to experience that to know what it is.
Right.
You can't explain it. So.
Right.
So when they came over and they worked with the horses, and there was a lot of emotions that came up for them, even
Okay.
for the doctors and the nurses and the
Interesting.
therapists, and so they got a taste of what it was really like. And the key to horses is that a horse is an animal that is preyed upon. So they read energy very well.
Yes.
And so if your inside doesn't match your outside, they let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how it works. And they are very large animals.
Right.
So there's a natural, a little respect for that size, especially
Right.
for your child, even adults. So
Sure.
it's very effective. And so as they start to do exercises, it's not a riding program, it's a communication program.
Interesting.
And they realize that, if I don't communicate honestly with this horse, it lets me know. A horse that senses contradiction will move away.
Interesting.
Yeah, a horse that senses aggression will move away.
So they help you set boundaries?
Yes,
perhaps?
help you set boundaries and help you learn to communicate in a different way, and also build up confidence and self-esteem.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's how I got involved with the Cherokee, and I met a wonderful person that was in charge of Analytsky, which was at that time, she was head of that program, which is a mental health program on the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians Reservation, Patty Grant.
Okay.
And got very close to Patty with that work. Many children came out, many to do therapy for a good while. Some of them were diabetic, and so it helped with their diabetes because it helped their self-esteem, and it helped them learn to set boundaries and control what they were doing.
Interesting.
And also we got children from a lockdown facility, which were not just Cherokee. This is a facility that is used for any Native American that has not been responding to therapy, traditional therapy.
Okay.
And it's really the final step between Cherokee and federal prison.
Okay.
If they don't clean up at this, then they're going to go to prison. And so it's an opportunity. And so they come to this facility on the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians koala boundary, and we had that for several years, where the children that have been exposed to the worst of the worst came and did therapy with the horses, and it was just a magnificent thing to experience. My involvement with that is I'm an equine specialist, so I was involved in the sessions. Yeah. So that's how I got involved with Cherokee.
Okay.
And then Patty let me know that her son, she loved horses so much that she named her son Horse in Cherokee. And I can't pronounce that, but that was during that time. That was probably in 2007.
Okay.
So then a movie was released called Buck, which uses horses for therapy, and it was a movie that was shown, all over the country.
Right.
And so I called Patty and I said, Patty, you've got to come see this movie. That it's really, really good, and I know your son will love it. And she said, oh, I can't. I've got to go out to Oklahoma because I'm trying to get support from the Katua band and from the Cherokee Nation to do a healing. And I said, oh, really? And so I said, what's that about? And she told me, and she said, I'd like for you to come to the Cherokee Healing and Wellness Coalition meeting. And I said, well, I'd be honored to do that. So I went to a meeting, and that's the beginning of my involvement. And so 3 years after that, with the planning and the meetings and everything, we started the journey.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it all evolved around horses. And
so the horse was the
catalyst for my involvement with Cherokee. Yeah,
and that's appropriate. I've heard and experienced it goes a little bit deeper in the healing process to work with horses, and much getting to the core issues versus just kind of skimming the surface.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't really, if you say
you can't
more
use
authentic,
your skills that you have used.
human skills.
Right. You can't use those skills that you've used to manipulate therapists with a horse. It doesn't work.
Right. So
a horse reflects what's going on inside of you.
What's
That's
authentic.
Very authentic.
Okay.
Very consistent, non-judgmental.
Beautiful.
But it's like, wonder why that horse ran away from me.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you have to look inside and say, oh, well, yeah, I was a little bit upset today, and then the truth starts to come out. And I've actually seen horses, this is the truth, that have gone to the far end of the arena.
Right.
When somebody is not matching inside to outside. And because that's their, what's a horse's survival technique? The first thing they do is run.
Right.
They only fight if they're cornered. Okay. So, they will move away as much as they can from danger. And so I've seen the horse go to the far end of the arena. And as the person that's in this therapy session starts to open up
and heal,
and their insides start to match their outside, I have literally seen a horse walk from the end of the arena back up to that person and lay their heads on their back.
How beautiful.
And the guy just crumbled, because he realized what he was doing. Yeah, so it's an awakening. It's a powerful therapy. Yeah.
And this program's called Music Behind the Mask.
And the mask is
the mask is what we all wear,
Yes.
and you can't get away with that with horses, obviously.
No, you can't. And that's what it does. It removes the mask in a safe environment.
Right.
Not in a
judgmental.
Right. So, it doesn't matter if you come back to the next session, what happened in the previous section. The horse is going to match what's going on with you now.
Right now.
And that's what happens. It brings the client into the present.
Beautiful.
So they have to be here now. And that's how the mask is released.
And
the mask I'm wearing is to show you that I'm happy. Oh, come on. If I remove the mask, they will see the fear.
and the forgiveness journey is all about being in the now as well, right?
Absolutely.
So is that the whole purpose of doing the Trail of Tears again and the healing ceremonies?
Well, it was Patty had a vision.
Okay.
And her vision was a vision of healing and forgiveness. Now, as she had that vision, a monument came to Cherokee from Tahlequah. And that monument was transformation through forgiveness.
Beautiful.
And it was a 16-foot high bronze monument of a Native American wrapped in an eagle.
Oh.
And it was about the trauma that we've had in our past,
Right.
and releasing that trauma so that we can forgive. And so that monument came to Cherokee. Patty had her vision. She went out to Oklahoma and talked with the chief of the Cherokee Nation, the chief of the Katua Band, and they all wanted to support this effort.
That's beautiful.
And so what it evolved, and there was a 3-year planning period, but what it evolved to in 2012 was a journey to forgiveness and healing.
Nice.
And so what took place is that Cherokee left the Qualla boundary on a bus, and we drove out to Tahlequah. And then we were stopping at 7 significant places on the northern route to come back to Cherokee. So before we started the journey, 2 of the elders, Amy Walker and Peggy Hill, went to the Katua Mound in Cherokee. Do you know where that was the homeland?
I've seen it.
Yeah.
When I was there last time.
Right. And that's the Katua Mound is where they took soil and they put it in 2 gourds, one to go to the Cherokee Nation and one to go to the Katua Band. Now there's 3 recognized federal tribes of Cherokee. The Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation, which is by far the largest, and then the Katua Band. So those are the recognized tribes. And so what happened is that because they did ceremony, we did sweats, and we did a fire ceremony, and we did the collection ceremony before we left to take the soil to Tahlequah, because many of those people would never come back to their homeland.
Right.
And so we're bringing their homeland to them.
Wow.
So that was what we were doing on our way.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so then when we got to Tahlequah, and you will see in the tapes and things that the chiefs of both tribes talked, and talked about the meaning of this journey and having the 3 recognized tribes together again. And so then I guess one of the most unique things before we started doing the Trail of Tears backwards, for forgiveness, was that they did a stomp dance.
Okay.
And a stomp dance is a religious ceremony
Okay.
of the ancient ways, and it's set up with clans. You have a little shelter for each clan, and then they start the dance around the fire. It's a lot of prayers, a big feast before the stomp dance, and once it starts, it lasts all night long. This dance started in the afternoon and lasted till 7 o'clock the next morning.
Oh my.
And it's just a powerful experience. But and it's a sacred experience. And I don't know of any white people that have had the opportunity to participate in that. But you could feel the earth move. It was vibrating. The men would do usually 7 men representing the 7 directions, and would start the dance, and they would be going counterclockwise because the fire was the spirit, and so your heart is closer to the spirit if you go counterclockwise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so doing the prayers, they would start, and then the women would 7 women would come between the men, and they would have turtle shells on them.
Okay.
And those shells is what would rattle when they were doing the stomp dance.
Oh, okay.
And that shell represents a new beginning, a new birth, a new beginning for this Mother Earth.
Nice.
And so then, as they did the dance, they would invite other clans to come in.
Okay.
Okay. And that's when we, the Eastern Band, got the opportunity to go in. And I just want to share this because it was so impressive to me. There was a little lady in front of me. She had to be 80 years old. And she turned around to me with tears in her eyes and said, "I've been dreaming of this all my life."
Oh.
And that was the first time that the tribes had danced together since the Trail of Tears.
Oh my.
first stomp dance where all three tribes were together. So this was a historical event.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just.
And I have friends on the western, they call it the Western Band of Cherokees. You know, and for those of us that don't understand, and I'm only just learning the history of what actually happened on the Trail of Tears from a Cherokee perspective.
Oh, yeah.
We know it in how we're raised in our own history books, which
Oh, honey,
never
it was
really
just
resonated.
a paragraph. Yeah, the
Right.
Native Americans were relocated in the American history books. It's an
Exactly.
entirely different story in reality.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
They had, there at Sequoia Museum, which is in Tahlequah, there was a letter that was written by a Union soldier that was part of the escorting to on this northern route.
okay.
And he wrote a letter and said he thought that he had seen the worst of man in the Civil War, with hundreds of people being killed in one field.
Wow.
He said that doesn't touch the cruelty of this.
Oh.
And oh my God, it brought tears to my eyes. So that gives, and that was a handwritten note that was preserved.
Wow.
That Trail of Tears, they didn't call it that then, but this removal act was the cruelest thing he had ever seen. Children dying.
Oh.
And the Native Americans, many, it wasn't just Cherokee, you know, all the tribes
it was
were
all
marched.
the tribes.
Yeah. And as they made their journey and they died, they wouldn't even allow them to do ceremony to take care of their dead.
Oof.
They had to leave them, oftentimes without even burying them.
Oh.
You know, so it was a cultural, absolutely horrific shock to everybody that was involved, even the soldiers that had to march them.
Now, and even within the Cherokee tribes themselves, they took different sides as well. Is that right? Was there a feeling of betrayal?
Well, yes, there was. And what had happened, just a quick little history, is that the Katua band at the motherland, they knew it was inevitable.
Okay.
They knew that they were going to have to leave. Okay? And so what they did is that they left early.
Ah, that's what it
Okay?
was.
And they left before the winter. They left and they marched, and they were in Tahlequah, and they had set up their own government in Tahlequah.
Okay.
Okay? And this motherland, I want to share this with you because it was the Katua mound where that's where the council house was sitting. But that was the mother town, and they called it that because it was called the Peace Town.
Okay.
No one in the boundary of Katua could be harmed. No one. A husband couldn't beat a wife. A child could not be struck. No one could be harmed in Katua. It was a peace town.
Interesting.
And the first of all, and there were several that developed. I think there were 13 that had spun off of this. But what happened after the Katua left and those who refused to leave at that particular area, when the soldiers came in, they were massacred because those who were left could not kill them. They couldn't harm. They couldn't harm anybody.
Oh, okay.
You know, they were honoring their belief.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a terrible story about that because the white man took that over and they plowed everything up, and you know the mound that was 8 feet tall at one time is now a step.
Wow.
But anyway,
this is why it's so important. If the Cherokee and the Native tribes can go through the journey of forgiveness after
absolutely
all of this, then
it's forgiving
anybody,
the unforgivable.
That's why it was so important
Yes.
of what was happening, because
Yes.
if after all of that they could be leading
Yeah,
in the U.S. this forgiveness journey, then who can't?
exactly. So the Katua, to finish a little bit of history, went over, and then the forced removal happened. And those who were left that they could find were forced to march, and they gathered in Tennessee in stockades that were the model for concentration camps. Okay. They weren't fed, they weren't clothed, they didn't have sanitation, they were just put in stockades like animals until they decided to start the march. Some took the northern journey, some took, there were 7 different routes that was taken, the northern being where most of them died. Okay. And so by the time all the Cherokee that made it got there, the Katua had already established a government there, and they invited them to come in and be part of their government, but they felt betrayed
Right.
Because they went during the warmer months. They went beforehand. They
They
left.
took care of themselves.
Yeah, but they left the motherland, you know, and so there was a lot of misunderstanding, I guess is the best way. And Patty can certainly explain this to you better than I can, between those two. So that's why we have the Cherokee Nation, and that's why we have the Katua Band in Oklahoma.
Interesting.
Those who were left, who hid in the mountains and were left in North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, in that area, they were really looked down upon because they didn't have to go through the suffering that the Cherokee Nation.
And that's where the resentment is.
So all three tribes, yeah, all three tribes had their, you know, their pain, their DNA disturbed from what took place from their ancestors. And so anyway, that's just a little bit, yes, you're right, that's why. So the three tribes coming together for the first time in a sacred dance was huge. Yeah, it was huge. Yeah. Now there had been gatherings where the Katua and Eastern Band had gathered together for, you know, governmental reasons, or the Cherokee Nation and the Eastern Band had been together, or the Nation and the Katua, but not the three. Not the three. And then when this journey took place, it was the first time that all three chiefs met together.
Interesting.
Yeah, for a government meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a breakthrough.
Powerful.
Yeah, it was breakthrough. That year, 2012, was a breakthrough for the Cherokee. And again, as you pointed out, it was forgiving the unforgiveness. And if they can do that, then we can all forgive. And so even friends of mine that were, you know, as we all, our families, a lot of us came from Europe and they had been abused and whatever, and we ran away from that. You know, we have to forgive the abusers.
That's the key.
Yeah.
And generations pass it on.
Oh, absolutely.
What we don't heal ourselves is passed on.
Absolutely, for 7 generations.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And so this journey that the Cherokee made was so important because the tears that flowed were expressed to prevent the next 7 generations from having to feel that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, with the it's a process. As I've talked with Patty a little bit, and we'll be tomorrow as well, or Saturday. It's a process that has to kind of keep happening. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because it was the catalyst to begin it.
Right.
But
the work
it's important
is still
to
there.
keep going with it and remembering and to gather more.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't easy to put together, from my understanding.
Oh no. The journey itself wasn't easy, but to put together and to plan. But the journey itself was not easy.
Right.
There was youth there. I think they went from maybe 11 to 18 or something like that. But anyway, there was Cherokee youth there, as well as elders.
Okay.
You know, and then the few of us that had the honor to join in. But we did, as we were coming back, we stopped at 7 locations that it was believed where the Cherokee camped.
Okay.
And that Cape Girardeau was probably the most emotional because so many died there.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you could feel the energy. You could feel, but the intent was to come back on the Trail of Tears backwards, and so we did walk some of it, but it was a bus ride from one location to the next, and we did healing ceremony, and Don Kiowas was the facilitator, and he had a hoop, because the Native Americans, their thinking is circular. The sacred hoop is representative of their life, generation after generation. Okay. And it was a hoop of 100 eagle feathers. So it was just powerful. Magical. And then a mask that also had eagle feathers on it. And so we would do healing circles, at each location, and they would last up to 3 hours. I mean, it went to the innermost part of your being. And so when we started, the very first healing circle, some of the children were very honest, and they said they hated the white people.
Okay.
They didn't know why we were there. They wished that we weren't on the journey, and and
Sure.
just very
Being genuine.
honest. Sure, which was that's the safety of doing this healing.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, by the next, that went on for 3 hours, and a lot of tears, a lot of wailing, a deep felt emotion. And the intent was to honor those who have passed by there, and to ask forgiveness from our ancestors, whether it be the soldiers that marched them or the Native American, for what took place, and to not carry that hatred any further. Another thing we did was that in the ceremony we collected soil.
Okay.
And put it in the gourd. Soil was collected from each stop that we made, and the idea was to bring the ancient ones back to the motherland and release them of their pain and their trials and tribulations. So that was it's hard to even talk about, but that was the intent, not just to release those of us who were participating now, but to bring the spirits back to the homeland, since they would never be able to come back. So, go ahead.
Do you feel it was very important to invite you and a couple other to represent the white the healing process, so
Yes.
it could be a mirror reflection
Well,
for the young people,
what
or for
happened, it was just an amazing journey, because by the end of the journey, the children were holding us as we were in tears.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was profound. It was profound, and so there was a lot of healing amongst the people there and the old belief systems that were being held generation after generation.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Just an incredible journey.
So what do we do from here?
Well, we came back to the motherland, to the Katua Mound, and we did a water ceremony to release. They call it the long man, the water, but to release the collected spirits back into the water, to give them release from their pain and tribulations. So that was a big step and a powerful step. And there were ceremonies held in the beginning, for a couple of days at Katua, and there were ceremonies held at the end of the journey for a couple of days at the Katua Mound. So Telequai and Katua were both part the beginning and ending of this reversal. And so the idea, and what they're doing now, is trying to continue this journey. And so, when you're in high school, or when I was in high school, we did our senior trip. You went to different places. Well, they're trying to incorporate the trip to offer to students at Cherokee, because the healing begins with the youth.
Right.
It's real important to stop that vicious cycle.
Right.
And so now they're planning another trip for the youth to go.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and hopefully the healing will continue and continue. And, those who went, it changed their lives.
Sure.
And so those children are going out into the communities now, and saying, well, no, wait a minute.
Mentors.
Yeah, as mentors. Yeah, so that's what it's, in my opinion, that's what it's about. But it's an ongoing process. You don't do one thing and heal.
It's all fixed.
Yeah. But what happens when you have such a spiritual experience is that you recognize when these old feelings come in.
You see them now, whereas before you didn't.
Right. Before you reacted. But now you know, oh, I remember those feelings. That didn't work for me. So what they did, they forgave the unforgivable. They released the past so that they could live now and have their future. And as you'll see as you go through the film, the elders were releasing, crying, so that the next 7 generations did not have to carry that pain that's been passed down from generation to generation. Yeah. And it's called historical trauma. It's not You know, it's not something that, that you have a choice of whether you want to, carry. It's a historical trauma that is in their DNA. I mean, it's ingrained in them. Right. And that's a big process to release that and let it go. And that was one of the steps to do that.
Absolutely.
The healing journey was.
And as we move forward, on a different topic, but similar, is the One Song.
Mm-hmm.
Also a parallel theme of Journey to Forgiveness.
Yeah.
Which was given at the same time, similar timing.
Yeah.
Not knowing that
this was all
happening.
Integrated. Yeah. Yeah.
What would you suggest to integrate the next steps with One Song and the Cherokee and the youth?
Well, I think there's more than just the Cherokee that the One Song is going to touch.
It's the whole global world.
Yeah.
The Rainbow Tribe is what I call it.
Yeah.
Inviting all of us together.
Right. And I think it's taking place. We are not guiding this. The time is coming for all of us to remember who we really are. Right. And the One Song is another step in that direction. Yeah. And we are all one. Mm-hmm. And so we have to recognize what we do to others is what we're doing to ourselves. Right. And as we carry hatred and carry pain and grief from past generations, we're really hurting ourselves with that. You're not hurting the people that you're hating, you're hurting yourself. And that's the releasing. So we don't not just have to release, what's going on with others, but we have to forgive ourselves. We've got to forgive ourselves for what we did to survive. Right. What we did to get through the traumas of our life. Mm-hmm. And, that we carry that guilt with us if we don't. Right. And that will tear us apart and keep us closed where we're not open to the One Song, not open to that knowing. Mm-hmm. But once you open up and you recognize that, wow, holding that child's hand and that child holding me is that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And feeling that truth, the truth coming through, and not the lies, not the hatred, not the things that were blocking us from knowing who we are. So that's what I think is going on.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Is there any other last thoughts? Or?
I think, unless you have questions, I've expressed what occurred with me on the journey.
Your own personal transformation.
It was life-changing for me.
In what way?
I went into emotions that I didn't even know I had. Interesting. Yeah, they just welled up inside of me. And a lot of guilt and a lot of things I was carrying for others that I didn't know existed.
Interesting.
And being brought up in a white society and being, in my opinion, lied to as far as our history is concerned.
Right.
And then learning the truth, it just, it welled up inside of me. How could we in America not recognize what we were doing? Mm-hmm. And it's true, the hurt people hurt people. We come over from Europe and we're damaged, we're carrying that hatred and that we want our freedom and we want to be able to express ourselves to this country. And we did the same thing.
We passed the behavior on.
Absolutely.
The part of the story, interesting, you just made the link that I didn't even recognize, is that we came over hurt and oppressed also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of the image of us coming over as if we had it all together, and this and that, we were coming over as wounded people as well.
Absolutely.
And so we were reacting and acting out, claiming from the outside versus the inside.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's the part I'm just learning as we just said that.
Yeah, well, good.
So it is the forgiveness of global forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Of passing behavior on from culture to culture and then trying to get control of it elsewhere outside of ourselves.
A friend of mine from Ireland gave me a piece of their woven material, the plaid, to take with me on this journey. Interesting. Because she said, I've got to forgive the English for coming in. and decimating our land, and
Right.
and so this is repeated time and time and time and
Throughout
since
humanity.
man's been on humanity, and now is the time for the awakening.
Yep.
And so you don't shame and blame people for what happened in the past. That's not what this was about at all.
That's
It was
beautiful.
about true forgiveness, about releasing,
Yep.
so we can live now and remember who we are.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing today.
thank you.
Appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time.
Yeah, good.